Can you agree to no child support at family law mediations? That is our topic for today, part of the series Mediation with or Without Attorneys with Ty Bodoni. Welcome to the Lawyers and Mediators International Show and Podcast by InstantMediations.com, where we discuss law and conflict resolution topics to educate both professionals and everyday people. Catch regular episodes on YouTube, the Instant Mediations app, and anywhere you get your podcast. Just remember, nothing in these episodes constitutes legal advice, so be sure to talk to a lawyer, as cases are fact dependent. Hey everyone, this is Mac Pierre-Louis, attorney, mediator, and arbitrator, working throughout Florida and Texas.
And Natalia Łowska-Czajka, advocate, mediator, and arbitrator from Warsaw, Poland.
And Ty Bordoni, Director of Mediation for CPLS PA in Orlando, Florida, primary mediation trainer and a full-time mediator.
All right, welcome back, guys. So let's jump right into it. So the topic for today is, can you agree to no child support at your mediation? And this topic is specifically focused on the moms and dads who go to mediation and they're trying to resolve some divorce issue, custody case, child support matter, anything involving a child, right? Who's the most important person in this, to be discussed at mediation, or children, because a lot of times there are multiple kids. And the issue of child support is probably one of the more controversial topics at mediation because, well, let's face it, somebody's going to be paying somebody else money. And, I worked for the Attorney General Child Support Office for a number of years, as you guys know, right after law school. And I've always said that child support law deals with people's sex lives because of paternity and DNA, their money because of the bank accounts and payments, and their children, whom they love. And so the most intimate things about you, okay, your sex life, your money, and your kids are on the table to be debated sometimes in this area of child support. So having touched a lot of that, it's no surprise, no wonder why when parties come to me for mediation, they sometimes want to do special solutions for child support. And one of them is, well, why don't we just not pay it? And let's think of other ways to address it to help support the child. So that's the topic, guys. Ty, Natalia, what have you seen with regards to this question? Does it come up a lot? And then how do you typically respond?
Natalia?
Okay, so first of all, I do believe that this question of paying no child support is a question or an issue where people can have a strong feeling of, first of all, attachment, so can be very emotional. And second, it can give them a very strong feeling of success if they are able to settle on something that enables them not to pay. So this no child support is a very, very big issue in mediation. And no surprise that quite a lot of mediators know that you can go through many things in mediation, but in family mediation, the child support usually goes as the last one because it is so complicated, it is so complex, and sometimes even you can just show the parties. So you've been through so much. We agreed on so much. Like, for example, we agreed on separation of goods. We agreed on parental plan, and we agreed on visitation. So now we are stuck on child support. Let's do something about it. And I do have some ideas on it. But first, Ty, I want to hear your views on it.
So does this come up all the time? Right? I think a mediator's first instinct has to be wary of the idea that there can be no child support. Let's remember, child support isn't mom's, child support isn't dad's, or mom and mom's, or dad and dad's. It's the child's money, right? So the court has jurisdiction over child support. So it isn't really up to the parties to easily decide and say, oh, we have already, what do you hear? You'll hear, oh, we already talked, we agree on what child support's going to be. So it isn't just, can there be no child support? It's, can they figure out their own, can they agree to their own numbers, right? And so the first place my sense is that a mediator has to go is, no, but maybe. It depends on the situation, right? So what's an easy one? Parties have 50-50 time sharing, and the parties have very similar incomes. That's an easy one. Yeah, it could work out, in fact, that because you're both having equal time and you both make $45,000 a year, just to pick a number, right? It could be that the number is either going to be so close to zero that it's de minimis, meaning that it's okay. The court could say then that there's no child support. That happens sometimes. But that's not the case a lot of times, right? A lot of times, life is more complicated. And but there could be instances where, one, I think it's case by case. So the general overarching perspective of the mediator should be, yet no, that's not up to the parties. But case to case, there could be instances when. So I like to first start off by saying it's not mom's money, it's not dad's money, it's the child's money. The court has jurisdiction. However, there could be situations, there could be circumstances. And so one is, what if somebody is taking care of so many things? The non-majority time-sharing parent is paying the daycare costs. They're paying the health insurance. They're paying pick something, a couple, and it's so much that they're paying that it really is. It could be equivalent to. It might even be a little bit more than they're supposed to be paying. Sure, that's probably a really, really good one. Or what about this? What about when somebody wants to pay too much child support? I've never seen the court say no to too much child support. I don't see it enough, but I do see that sometimes. So it's case by case. Our first instinct, however, should be, the answer is no. However, maybe depending on the circumstances. And then and then the mediator has to follow their instinct. And in listening, you get a sense, okay, that does make sense. I see that. And or you're listening, and more often than not, and I'll go out on a limb, it's a party trying to get to not pay their obligation. And I'll follow my mediator's spider sense. And, if it starts going off, I'm not even going there. And then my excuse is, regretfully, child support, the court has jurisdiction. We have to follow guidelines. I'm sorry, but don't worry, I can reserve on this issue. And now when I scare them and I say, I can reserve, you can let the court decide. No, I don't want the court to decide. And then they'll start working with you. So more often than not, it's someone wants to not pay something. But there are instances when it can. And when the parties are working well together, that's when the mediator should then try and help them figure it out if it makes sense. If in this situation, right, in the child's best interest, they are doing what they need to be doing. And you'll know, and then I'll work with them. But other than that, no, sorry.
Yeah. So thank you, Taya. A lot to say. Some common ways this question's been resolved in the past, in my experience. Sometimes you have parties agree to not pay child support in terms of cash and money transfers or garnishments from his job, but he'll pay in kind somehow. I've done it where one party was paying the house note where the mother and the children were going to live. Well, that was more than enough. It took a big load off mom's back, and she was able to live with the children comfortably, knowing that housing is paid for. Not common. I mean, it's not a common thing. I mean, you might see this case happen where somebody's got money and they're able to use property that way, or maybe they have an investment property or another piece of property that they own. Well, they don't have a duty to let her and the kids stay there, but maybe it works out for the benefit of both of them.
Right.
For the mediator to lead them to a
Right.
solution that is that customized. Another thing people should know is whenever you talk about, like, I get this a lot where people might suggest, hey, can we just not do any child support into the future and I'll just give them one lump sum right now? uh in
Hmm.
Texas, almost no. Okay, almost never. That's not going to happen because it's like Ty says, the child's money. The child has a right to receive support. You don't know what's going to happen in the future, where there might need to be a modification.
Right.
uh, so we have to always leave it open for the possibility of the court coming back and then redoing numbers. But the options boil down to, okay, you pay X amount that you negotiate, or you pay in kind some other way, or you let a judge decide. But I agree with Ty. I don't see how not paying anything or not supporting anything is really a way out. Uh, you might get a situation where the custodial parent says, you know what, I don't need it. Okay, that's rare. But if it happens, and there's no what we call assigned money to the state, meaning there's no
Hmm.
state benefits being
Entitlement.
received. Exactly.
Right.
40 courts, 40, the whole 40 system for child support in this country, in the US anyway, is very
Food
specific.
stamps, some
Yeah.
kind of other
Yeah,
state.
Medicaid, CHIP,
Yeah,
stuff like
Medicaid.
that.
Right. Right.
So that's gonna need to be addressed with the
Right.
authorities because they want their money. Okay.
And it could be out of
But
our hands at that point. Department of
exactly.
Revenue in
But
Florida may. Right.
if there isn't
Right.
any kind of Department of Revenue or Attorney General, uh, DSHS state benefits being received, usually the parties can do anything they want because in Texas anyway, we have special laws, case law that basically tells judges, look, you got to honor the parties' agreement. If the parties want to do something, you got to honor it, as long as it wasn't obtained fraudulently. It's not something that's being done out of duress. It's not being forced on the person, and it's in the kid's best interest because it's not dangerous to the child. Generally speaking, most judges will let the parties go ahead and do what they want to do on child support, provided they protect the state's money.
Can be a slippery slope, however.
Mhm.
It, no, definitely. So you have to talk to an attorney. This whole topic, guys, is very heavy on
Yeah.
it depends.
It
Okay.
depends.
You have to talk to an attorney when it comes to this area. And so when you come to mediation, you bring your lawyer with you, they can navigate you a little bit better. So obviously, as the intro said to this video, nothing we say here is legal advice. It's meant for educational and informational purposes only. So it depends, it depends, it depends. Natalia?
Yeah.
Having
Right.
said that, there is a little ray of light in all of that because when you finally come to mediation, sit at the table or online with your mediator and the other party, looking at the child support, you can see that it has a lot of aspects. When we usually speak about child support, we think about how it is going to be for the future. But you still have the aspect of the retroactive child support
Yeah.
and the arrears in child support. And in here, on many occasions, I've seen that you can agree on a no retroactive child support, and you can either reduce your arrears upon the agreement with the other party or even liquidate it. Usually, you have to give something, give quote unquote, in exchange because it is an agreement anyway. However, you can think about child support not only as we usually do for the future, but what happens backwards, what
Hmm.
happens with what I owe, or what happens for the periods this has not been adjudicated, but I was not paying that really. And that's also something to for those who lack success and want to see the mediation as something where they achieved something big. No child support backwards, no back child support, no arrears or no retroactivity. That's also a success, and this is also something that is worth fighting for. And another thing, I do believe that sometimes the name child support,
Mm.
alimony, is something that really brings people, I mean, gives them fever or other heart attack symptoms.
Agita. Yes.
And
Yeah. Hmm.
sometimes for a good mediator, it takes I'm sorry to say, to change the name of it. So sometimes when I do mediate,
What's the
I
change
put it
name?
in words.
Yes.
It's
What
changing,
is
and
the
I'm not
change
calling
name?
it a child support, but let us say like an allowance to make your child's living better, or equalizing the standard of living of the mom and dad, meaning for the child. And you would be very surprised, but it works. And really, so if they hear that it is no alimony, but they're paying something that is going to make the standard of living of the child better than where they are, okay, that sounds fair. Let's do that. And sometimes I do have solutions like that. And on top, I want to say that sometimes, speaking of those things in kind, sometimes people are really not trusting the other parent to give them money just like that. They
Mhm.
prefer to be sure that what they pay goes to a particular expenditure, something that is seeable in the child's life. And this is, for example, where you can agree on paying, for example, education. So the tuition fees to a particular place. And that will be, and I've seen that. We agreed on many cases where this tuition fee, especially usually high for really good education, would
Private
then
school.
reduce any child support whatsoever because of the, and then you being a father or mother paying that, you can be absolutely certain that this money goes precisely to where the child receives it, and this other parent has nothing to do with it because
Mm.
you administer it. So I've seen something like that as well. Or the last
Yeah.
solution we have, you can also sometimes, for other reasons, agree on something that will be like a symbolic, very, very tiny amount that's still child support, but doesn't really serve for much, but because of some other things that you provided or are going to provide, or some other dealings you are going to have, for example, in the division of marital property, you agree on a very, very tiny child support because of how many assets the custodial parent gets.
Um, so I think those tend to be separate, and so I'm trying to think. So, for instance, when we talk about the yearly federal tax exemption, right? Who's going to claim the minor child? I've seen that something and/or arrearages, right? Sometimes the parties are at a disagreement, and you recognize, well, there's these other relate alimony. There's other related places that we have to have a discussion on, that maybe having the discussion on those things can help the parties then come to agreement on, because they'll see it, to go to your other point, helping them see it in different ways, speaking about it differently, helping them see how it relates to other things. And so, for instance, uh, what about alimony, right? That's not child support. That's some kind of support, spousal support. But how does spousal support, does it have anything to do with child support? Sure, because, well, what's your income? My income is this. Okay, that's your monthly income. Oh, and you're getting alimony? Okay, do we include that? We do include that in the child support guidelines. And so what's going to now that individual has more money, it might equate to the person who's supposed to pay child support, their obligation goes down a little bit, even though they're paying something else over here. And, well, I want to affect that somehow. Well, can we talk about, can alimony, the state has no interest in alimony. The parties can absolutely discuss, alimony. And so there's different ways in which you can affect the final outcome of child support. For instance, who's going to claim the who's going to claim the yearly tax exemption for the federal tax exemption for the children? Well, if one party says, the party who's supposed to pay, right, that is also calculated as if it's income on the child support guidelines. If they let the other party claim it, right? If you think about it in the aggregate, how much money are we talking about? That's one of the ways that sometimes we can get rid of arrearages, by helping the other party and saying, listen, they say that you can keep their tax exemption and you can claim every single year. And then when you show them, look, that works out to this much money over the course of, And so those little things can help the parties come to agreement as well sometimes. And I know someone out there saying, yeah, but wait, it's the federal law says that whoever the child lives with, they're the one who gets it. That's not wrong. But in family mediation, in family law, the parties can, right? Sometimes a court will award each party the use of a tax exemption in alternating years. But you can use that to help the parties bridge a gap sometimes. What about the arrearages and retro? Likewise, sometimes if someone knows, well, I'm not going to have to pay $10,000, okay, then yes, let's agree. And you're going to take the tax exemption. And then can you then help them come to an agreement? Can they still agree on the child support? Well, again, if everyone is working well together, can you be creative with the number of overnights? Can you be creative with income? Can you be creative? You can. The question is, should you? Right? And so you don't just do it because the parents want to do it. I think if you're going to do it, it's because your instinct is telling you, wow, they're working well together. And this, my sense is that they're doing this in the best interest of the child. Then we can be creative with them, right? But if what I'm seeing, if what my gut is telling me is someone is just trying to get out of an obligation, I am not going to be inclined to be creative with them. On the contrary, my perspective is going to be respectfully, child support is by guideline. The court has jurisdiction, and that's just my, so it's case by case, right? As we're saying, and you're going to look at it, and you're going to, in this case, what are the other factors that factor in that we can anticipate and that we can see and that we can work with to help you get there. So sometimes you can, and sometimes you can't. It's the interesting thing is it's case by case.
Absolutely. This topic, um, it has, I guess, two extreme parts. One of them is absolutely negotiable, but the other extreme is that the law has set guidelines
Mm-hmm.
that tells you what's supposed to happen. Okay, what it's supposed to look
Right.
like. And so, how can something both be negotiable, but at the same time, here's how
Right.
you do it?
Right.
Okay, and so you that
It's a
then,
maybe.
but huh?
It's a
Say
maybe.
what?
It's
Yeah,
maybe.
it puts parents in a position where you typically then have dads say, "Well, we can work something out ourselves." And you typically
Yeah.
hear mom say, "Well, that's the law." Okay? And those two worlds clash sometimes, and I'm just being very generic when I said that.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Let's be
I
honest.
can all I can do is say the different ways I've seen this worked out from my experience, and people can then think, you know what, maybe it's possible in my case by case. For example, maybe the scenario where you have a parent saying, "Hey, give me more visitation time, but since I have the child more, I'd like to
I
pay
pay less.
less," and
Yeah.
then we can work something out that way. Or maybe we'll do the scenario where we've done the step up, and where the parent will be like, "Look, this X amount of money is going to be really hitting me pretty hard right now. Can we agree to something that's slow steps across time? And then, so from now until X date, I'm going to pay this amount. And then beginning of the next date, I'll step up to this amount." And you slow step until the other parent is receiving the full guideline support. Just a way to work it out to where it's negotiated and it's easier to swallow. Or Ty brought up the tax one. That's a big one where you give one parent the right to claim a child for federal taxes. Um, Another thing Natalia brought up was arrears and back child support. Well, this one is literally almost negotiable.
Mm,
Again, subject to state assignments, okay, for certain
right.
benefits being
That's the
received.
point. That's right.
And so sometimes I get calls a lot, from people who owe a lot of retroactive child support or back child support arrears. And there's a difference between retro and arrears. But when a person fears that they're going to be taken to court, they're going to have this big judgment on their back that could potentially hurt their credit, affect their passport, and basically ruin their credit because there are consequences to having bad child support debt. It can even lock you up, right? When a
It could.
person really does not want that on their back, then they may be incentivized and motivated to work something out and work out a
That's right.
deal with the other parent.
That's right.
I'm always telling folks, look, if you got the money as a lump sum and you got some cash sitting there, well, take that and try to make a deal with the other person, because sometimes the other person might be willing, the other parent might be willing to
Right.
take the lump sum, in exchange to forgive a difference instead of getting a judgment little by little by little every month.
And
That
then
may
have to
never be
worry
paid
about
off.
right, right,
So
right,
there's so many different ways
right.
that we can address this. And sometimes, I'll be honest, we can't.
Right.
Sometimes we've come to the situation where one parent just flat out says, no negotiation. I want what the law says I'm entitled to, period. And so and child support is one of those things. We don't have debtor's prison in America, but we can lock you up for not paying child support debt because it's intended to support children. Okay.
Mhm.
And it's a form of neglect if you don't. And so this then becomes very heavy of a topic. But we're just trying to help people know, look, you can look into it to see if you can negotiate something that's going to be better. But you got to be
Yeah.
willing to work with the other side, and it can be done. You just got to come to mediation and try to do it.
Yeah, so many factors, and it's case by case specific. But I believe a mediator needs to err on the side of caution,
Yeah.
right? And
The
just
law.
because people say we've agreed doesn't mean that, well, it's their agreement, they agree, self determination. We can't know, not where an entitlement I'm sorry, not where child support is concerned, because it's the child's money, and so they shouldn't be negotiating the child's needs, and the court has jurisdiction over that. So a there's got to be a good reason for it, and
Yeah.
that's when the mediator should then work with them. But if your spider sense is telling you someone just doesn't want to pay,
Yeah.
tell it to the judge, and they can tell you what to do. You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah, I think back child support or retro is
yeah,
probably a little easier to work out
absolutely, yeah,
deals with, where the guidelines don't hit you as hard.
right,
But yeah, if you got a 5-year-old you're talking about and mom is making minimum wage and dad's just not wanting to pay child support.
yeah. Too
And
bad,
by
Dad.
the way, I've never hear men say that. I never hear dad say that. Okay. Typically it's the amount that they're asking for is gonna kill me and I gotta live too. Okay. And we can work out deals that way as well. But this one is very touchy. And
Yeah.
uh people just need to, use a little bit of reason, a little common sense, when they
Right.
approach it. Natalia?
And talk to a lawyer, right? Because
Yeah,
it's not,
exactly.
well, my sister's uncle's cousin doesn't have to pay. Well,
That's a
that's
good
not the
one.
same
No,
case.
that's a good one because every case is different.
Every
And
case
guess
is
what? Every state law is different as well on the topic.
different.
And so the only one commonality is where the Attorney General, the Department of Revenue, is involved in Florida, Texas, for example,
Yeah, yeah,
because then they have a say as well.
that's right. We may
Okay,
not be able
so
to do anything because it has to go through DCF. Excuse me, it has to go through the Department of Revenue.
exactly. Italian.
Having said that, you can see in how many ways you can be creative in mediation on not paying child support, paying less child support, or paying child support in a wiser way. And
In
let's
the
put it
best
this way.
interest
And
of the child. Yes.
yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. So with that, I would want to make us sign off and see you next time.
All right,
Stay
guys.
well. Always a pleasure.